I love everything you're doing. And I know we're talking about sourcing in Mexico tonight, but we also partner with Amazing at Home. And at the end, you can also touch on other services. And I know some people who are getting on right now have actually used your services and have loved partnering with you. So you are absolutely incredible. And I do want to say one other thing before we officially kick it off. You have also been an Amazon seller. And I think that that's super cool when people who are successful Amazon sellers then move into other areas
And
of
I still sell on Amazon.
and you still sell. Yes.
Yes, I still have a pet brand, but I've been selling on Amazon since 2007. So I'm an OG in the Amazon space, for sure. But yeah, I still sell today. And yeah, I definitely love doing all the different things that e-commerce has to offer, like my consulting and marketing and everything, as well as events. But yeah, still love being an Amazon seller.
Yes. And then you get to help other Amazon sellers. And like, I love that part about it too. So we've talked about that, just being able to help everybody and also fulfill other areas of our lives outside of selling that we want to do.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, let's check back in with Jamie, unless he like went back to Camp Ecom and is having fun already.
Oh, come on. Not possible. This is fun. Yes, it's good. We're on our live streams. I'm going to update a few titles on. I always have to update some of the titles on the stream, but yeah, we're ready to go. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Well, Amy, we are so excited to have you on the AMZ Insiders tonight. And you are an incredible entrepreneur. You own Amazing at Home. You are changing the sourcing landscape with sourcing in Mexico. And that is our topic tonight. If you want to give a little bit of introduction about yourself, and then we can just jump right in.
Yeah, awesome. Yep. I've got a little slideshow for you guys tonight, and excited to just kind of talk all about sourcing in Mexico. A little bit about me. As we just talked about, I've been selling on Amazon since 2007. I started as just a hobby when I was in college. I was in the United States Air Force for 18 years. And when I was going through college, while I was in the Air Force, I was looking for textbooks. And I saw this little button on Amazon that said, sell yours here. And I was like, ooh, okay, I can buy and sell my textbooks on Amazon. So that's how I started. And I just kind of had like a little hobby, a little side gig while I was in the military. And then in 2017, I invented a product. And it really frustrated me that the process for inventing a product from scratch was very cloudy. And I let that fuel me to get on a mission to really help as many people as I could to bring their own products to market. So that's not only did I bring my own products to market, and I'm still selling those today, but I also have helped now thousands of entrepreneurs bring their products to market. And part of that is sourcing. And so in 2018, I started going to China and taking entrepreneurs with me and taking them on sourcing trips. We would, do factory tours. We would go to the Canton Fair. We would go to global sources in Hong Kong. And I really enjoyed that experience. There's nothing like the Canton Fair. I mean, it's incredible. Over 60,000 suppliers in one place. So fast forward, we have the pandemic, right? And all of us have had struggles with our suppliers and our supply chain in Asia. And there's nothing wrong with sourcing from China. I love China. I can't wait to go back when it opens back up again. But all of us, we're kind of looking for some alternative destinations. And Mexico, I'm here in Texas, so I saw some other people were from Texas too. Mexico just seems like the natural next destination. And I knew from my own product, made out of plastic, there's a little 3D printout of it, but I knew that that injection molds were made in Mexico. Living in Texas, I see retail products on my shelves all the time that are made in Mexico. And I was wondering, where are these manufacturers? And I thought, with my history in sourcing, there's no reason that I can't figure this out as well, right? So my partner, Tim Jordan, and I decided we would just take some sellers to Mexico on a sourcing trip, and we would go to a trade show. Well, guess what, guys? There are no multi-category trade shows in Latin America. So the crazy girl that I am, I started the only multi-category trade show in Latin America. It's called Evo Latam. And we had our first one in June. And it was a crazy venture. Mexico suppliers don't really understand what a multi-category trade show is. They just, they have tons of big trade shows. Like, don't get me wrong, you could find your niche in Mexico. You can find a trade show. I would highly recommend you go, but there aren't any trade shows where you have multiple categories of different products. So we started one there, right? So it was a big hurdle to overcome, but we did. And our first event was in June, and we had over 700 sellers show up in Mexico City. And then we are doing it again here in February. So tonight, I'm very excited. I'll share my screen, Joey. And I am very excited just to kind of walk you guys through this fun that we have here. So let me just go to the present button. Canva is always kind of funny on me. There it is. All right. So we're going to talk about sourcing from Mexico and what you need to know. And you can see some of the pictures from my last trip. It just makes me nostalgic. I love it. We had so much fun. We only bring 100 sellers max on our sourcing trip, and that includes our staff and everything. So it ends up being about 80 sellers. But you can see all of the fun that we had. And then, anybody can come to the trade show, of course. So what we're going to talk about, why do we need alternative sourcing locations, the opportunity in Mexico, and I would love to hear from you guys in chat too. So let me know if you've got questions, let me know, what's going on, and I'm happy to answer those. Logistics, pros and cons, product opportunities, how you conduct business in Mexico, what makes it different, right? Who is Mexico a good fit for, and some advantages you have from sourcing from Mexico, and what to expect on our sourcing trip that's coming up here. So let's talk about the need for alternative sourcing. I talked about this a little bit already, but how many of you have had a problem where you have one supplier and that supplier is not necessarily reliable all the time? That is definitely a problem for a lot of people, right? Suddenly, and China's having, Joey says, I have. Yes, I think all of us have had this problem. And in China, what's happening with the labor force is that it's changing, right? So a lot of the factories are now doing e-commerce. Those workers end up starting their own e-commerce stores. It just kind of there's a lot more web presence in China as far as sourcing goes. So what happens after Chinese New Year is I want all you guys to check in with your factories after Chinese New Year, because often a lot of their workforce doesn't come back. And then you need to make sure you're not skipping inspections and stuff like that, because you can really have quality control problems. Even if your quality control has been great up until now with this factory, it's just, that's one of those things. You always need to have alternative options. So that is why we are thinking about Mexico, right? That's why we're exploring Mexico. And why did we choose Mexico? Well, it's close to the United States. There's no tariffs. You can get your products to Amazon in 2 days versus 30 days over the sea, right? And shipping costs are like nothing compared. And then the capability in Mexico is really, really great. So that's why we chose it. And that's why we really wanted to get into Mexico and explore everything they had to offer. So let's talk about, where does manufacturing in Mexico happen? So a little bit about Mexico. Mexico is about 3 times the size of Texas. So we all know Texas is big, right? I live in Texas, and I've lived in many states in the United States of America because of being in the military. I'm originally from Wisconsin. And the one thing that drives me nuts about Texas is I drive 8 hours and I'm still in Texas. In other states, you drive 8 hours and you've crossed 4 state lines, right? So you can see Mexico's pretty big. And then the manufacturing zones are mostly near the borders, right? We got the Texas border right here, which is great for us because Mexico has a great highway system and it's very easy to get goods in. Paul says, I love Texas. And Lana says, Florida is the same. I love it. so, it's good to know where we've got a lot of manufacturing going on. And then languages spoken. Of course, this graphic says 90% speak English, speak Spanish, and 10% speak English. But it's good to know in some of the bigger cities, there's over 1 million expats from the United States alone that live in Mexico. So there's a lot of westernization. There's a lot of English language spoken in Mexico. So that's just important to note. We do have translators at our trade shows and stuff like that, but for the most part, people can communicate pretty well, even at trade shows and everything like that. So you will find English to be pretty prominent, and it's pretty easy to get around there. All right, let's just talk a little bit about the trade history in Mexico. It goes back to 1519 when the Spaniards arrived, and that's when they started their age of industrialization. And then, 1877, electricity and railroads. We got 1917, that's where, Mexico adopted its constitution and really started, it as one of the world's top manufacturing destinations. 1961, they started with the maquiladoras. And that encouraged foreign investment. And there's even China now, a lot of the Chinese factories are reopening their factories or building new factories in Mexico, which is really exciting. It's just bringing more and more money and investment and industrialization to Mexico. And then in 1994, that's when we started the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And that's what allows us to not have to pay tariffs. That's great. And that has now been replaced. I think it's called the MCA. But either way, we're still in a situation where we don't have to pay tariffs on our products coming from Mexico, which is great. And then in 2022, we went to Mexico for the first time. It was exciting. All right. So I really want you guys to understand, when we think about Mexico, a lot of us, I want to hear in the chat here, when you think about Mexico, what kind of products do you think you can get in Mexico? I know automotive, right? Cars are made in Mexico. What else? What else is made in Mexico? Okay, they do ceramics, right? Pottery, that kind of stuff. Maybe like handcrafts, that kind of stuff. Okay, here we go. Joey says clothes. Lana says textiles. Yeah, there's a lot of textiles. There's like some really popular clothing companies there. Did you guys know that Crocs are made in Mexico too? Did you know that big electronics companies like Seagate make all of their electronics in Mexico? Computers is one of the top exports. Did you know that Mexico is #2 in the world for plastics and injection molding? Did you know that Mexico has really great foam and synthetic raw material availability? So tons of products in Mexico and tons of opportunity. But we haven't met any of these manufacturers yet, right? Like we're thinking, where is the Alibaba of Mexico? If you go on Alibaba, you try to find has any of you guys done this, right? You go on Alibaba and you try to find a manufacturer in Mexico and you're like, this is a joke, right? And then you turn to Google and you're like, where are these manufacturers at, right? I had the same thing happen to me. And it's the reason that there's no Alibaba for Mexico yet, and there isn't a lot of web presence for these manufacturers, is because they haven't needed to do that until now. So previous to the pandemic, most of the factories in Mexico produced for their local retailers. And then they would export for US retailers, right? Because a lot of those retail chains in Mexico are also in the US, right? But, brands would open up factories, like Crocs has a factory, right, in Mexico, has 2 factories in Mexico, I believe. But, brands can open factories there, but there wasn't like contract manufacturing happening. It didn't need to. They had all the business that they needed to. But during the pandemic, what happened is a lot of the retailers and stuff that they were producing for shut down. Right. So now they had a huge growth in sellers in e-commerce businesses. And then they also had a huge growth in manufacturers wanting to go outside of their borders and learn how to export. So it's the perfect time for us to ride this wave, right? And there's a lot of opportunity. And the reason that we don't find manufacturers on the web is because there just wasn't a need before. So we're at the very beginning and we're going to experience this together. It's going to be cool. So what are the big 3 reasons to source from Mexico? First, we already kind of talked about this, closer proximity to the United States. So you got shorter lead times, less chances of delays, easier factory visits, right? I can be in Monterey in an hour. I love that. If I'm flying, I got to drive 5 hours, but lower cost of shipping. So if you look at a full container load from Mexico, depending on where you're located, you're looking at $3,500 to $4,000. A full container load from China is costing you how much? Right? 3 times that much on average for a full container load, right? So that's a significant savings. And not to mention smaller quantity loads, that's very easy ground freight. And then politics, of course, we've got NAFTA, which is now the US, Mexico, Canada agreement. As long as your product is 70% made in Mexico. So even if you have to import raw materials from China or somewhere else and bring them to your factory in Mexico, you are, as long as it's 70% made in Mexico, you're good to go. And when we're talking about making, it's okay to import your raw materials and then make it, right? So that is how you are able to save a lot by sourcing from Mexico. And then, of course, we all know, whether we like it or not, there's some stigma with made in China products. We're not going to completely replace China with Mexico right now. It's just not going to happen, right? There's a lot of, for me, I have 12 different SKUs in my brand, and I can replace most of my products, but there's a few that it just doesn't make economic sense to move them out of China, right? So, so that's what you should be thinking about. And then finally, actually, Mexico has a lower cost of labor than China. So as I talked about, China's workforce is changing. So they're at $650 an hour in China, and there's about $482 in Mexico. And that doesn't mean lower quality at all. It's just the way it is economically. So, it's to our benefit from that standpoint. All right, top exports. What is Mexico exporting in 2020? As I talked about, computers, video displays, wire, telephone, petroleum, seats, beer, awesome, fruits and vegetables, automotive and machines. And you guys are probably thinking, Amy, we don't source any of this stuff, right? So let's get into what you do source. These are some of the many different product opportunities that there are in Mexico. So we've got a lot of raw materials, we've got beautiful decorative goods, useful household items, all kinds of stuff. So household, office furniture, school and office supplies, patio and garden, rubber, ceramics, you guys can read, right? But I hope that you see something in this list that is exciting to you. And of course, there's other things too, like there was swimwear at our last trade show. We had a barbecue guy, we had packaging people, we had print on demand kind of stuff, just all kinds of different brands and manufacturers. So that is really, really cool. What in health and wellness? Yes, tons of health and wellness stuff, Carol, because that's one of the major exports to the US. So like skincare, beauty, supplements, like you name it, you can get it. And we actually have a distributor coming to the trade show that is in health and wellness as well. So that should be good. All right. So what's your business model? Most of you guys are doing private label, right? Some of you might be doing like some wholesale, you might be white labeling some things, right? But what is Mexico a good fit for? You might be wondering this, right? Like, is it good for private label, right? Does it work for me? And I do want to tell you guys that you have a myriad of opportunities here. First of all, there are tons of, remember how I talked about there's a lot more e-commerce growth in Mexico? There are a lot of brands in Mexico that don't sell outside of Mexico. So if I have a pet brand and I go to Mexico and go to this trade show and I meet some other brands that already have finished goods and would be an easy extension of my own brand, and they don't sell outside of Mexico, what kind of an opportunity is that for me? I got finished goods now. I have a partner in a lower cost part of the country, right? And I can easily expand my brand with little work there, right? So there's some white label opportunities, there's some wholesale partnership opportunities, and then of course, private label. Yes, we already saw all the different manufacturers and product availabilities. So you're going to be able to custom make products and have your private label in Mexico as well. So tips for doing business there. I always tell this story because before I started my trade show in Mexico and before I started going to Mexico myself, I tried to source from there. And you guys, it was a nightmare. Like, honestly, I had people there, like speakers for my events and like different contacts there that I was just starting to make. And I was like, hey, you know, I was on Google and I was just searching in Spanish for my type of factory, my type of manufacturing process. And I found a couple of what I thought were suppliers on Google in Spanish, right? And I had my contact in Mexico who speaks Spanish, everything like that, and lived like right near this supplier, reach out to them and get a quote. You guys, the quote that they gave me was more than my product cost retail, more than I sell it for on Amazon. And I was like, wow, how am I going to make this work? Like, maybe Mexico isn't all it's cracked up to be. Like, maybe this isn't right, right? And just letting you know, like, I talked to a lot of sellers, and a lot of the sellers that I've talked to have had the same story. They've had the same story of like, yeah, I found one online and I reached out to them. And I'm so happy to be able to tell you that when I went to Mexico and actually went to a trade show and talked to people, it was completely different. Like, prices were great and the factories that we talked to were awesome. And, you know, it was just a great experience, and it was so warm and friendly and awesome, and it just nothing like my remote sourcing experience. So I just want you guys to know that maybe you had heard from another seller that there's no way to make it work. Maybe, you know, it's just completely different when you go in person. So I just want to put that out there. Carol says, I had that experience online with the Mexico supplier. I know, right? So I actually had my guy follow back up with them and just like see what was really going on. Like, he went and visited. And what they were doing is they were buying this product wholesale, and they were finishing it, and they had like some, it's like a mat that I sell, and they were finishing it with the tool that they had there in their warehouse or whatever. And that's why it was so expensive, because then they were selling it like retail, right? So had I taken it a step further and actually gone and visited them, I could have made them my partner, because I have raw materials. I have a factory direct in China, right? So I could have probably made that work, you know? And we probably both could have grown, but it was just a wonderful lesson learned, you know, that there's always, you know, you go on Alibaba sometimes and you find a third party that's totally upcharging you, right? So it just is what it is, and it's important. That's why it's important to have relationships and go and actually source in person if you can do it, right? When I started going to China for the first time, it was just game changing. I took my margins from, you know, I think I had like 4x multipliers on some of my products, and I brought some of them up to 14x, just going to trade shows and building relationships and getting better pricing. So, and working directly with the factory. So that's, you know, what I would encourage you guys to do. So that takes care of points 1 and point 2. How is communication with suppliers in Mexico? I would like to say that communication is a little slower than in China. Right? It's a little slower because of the culture there is a little bit slower. It's not that they're not working hard. It's just they're a little slower about, you know, family's important, relationships are important. So that's the only difference, is that it's a little slower. It doesn't mean it's less effective. It just is different in terms of speed of communication back and forth. And then how are the MOQs? I get this question all the time. People are like, oh, I tried to source from Mexico and the MOQs were so ridiculous. I couldn't make it work. Every single supplier that we had at our trade show had reasonable MOQs, every single one. So that was just a total misconception. It was something that I thought could potentially be a problem because of everything I had heard, and it wasn't a problem at all. And it's the same way in China. It's the same way in any other country. If you don't have a relationship, your MOQs, the quotes that you're going to get are going to be really big. And you don't reach out to a supplier and the first question is say, how little can I buy from you, right? You need to learn how to have those conversations. And that's what the Mexico trip's all about. We're going to teach you how to be a sourcing expert. We're going to teach you how to have conversations so that whether you're sourcing from Mexico or China or Taiwan or India or the USA, where this product is made here, you're going to know more. You're going to be able to have those conversations. You're going to be able to really move your business forward. Is it safe? This is the other biggest question I get. People interested in the Mexico trip, they reach out to me all the time. Like, is it safe? Can I fly there? What does it look like? Remember when I mentioned about how there's more than 1 million expats from the United States of America that live in Mexico? And I'm in a lot of these Facebook groups because I want to buy some property in Mexico. And I've been looking at different areas and everything. And people in those Facebook groups bring up all the time, like, hey, is it safe? Like, where should I consider moving in Mexico? And everybody, all these expats who live there are like, it's safer than the United States. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it's awesome. So Mexico gets a bad rap because of obviously the drug cartels and like shows like Narcos on Netflix. But if you go to Chicago in the United States of America, are you going to go walk down a dark alley by yourself? No, you're not going to. You're going to be safe. You're going to be smart, right? And so everything on our trip, when you come to our trip and everything like that, it's all inclusive. It's all covered. Like, you don't have to worry about finding your own transportation or finding your own hotel or trying to worry about where you're supposed to stay or how you're going to get here, or how you're going to get there. You don't have to worry about that. We've got that all taken care of. But even in Mexico City, which is one of the largest cities in the world, on our last trip, we had people going to the taco stand from the hotel, and we had people going out for coffee and whatever, and nobody had an issue, right? Of course, you always go out with a friend. You don't just go out by yourself in a place where you don't know. It's just practice basic safety and you're going to have a great time. No problems in Mexico. I go to Mexico by myself all the time and I love it. All right. Do they have private label? We already talked about this. Yes, absolutely. And they want to work with you, and it's so exciting, right? And are there any trade shows to attend? Yes, of course. We have our Evo Latam, which is the multi-category trade show there. But I would encourage you guys. This is how I encourage people to actually find and explore different manufacturing capabilities in Mexico. Look for trade shows for your manufacturing process or your type, like health and wellness, fashion, whatever it is. Like, look for trade shows, like the equivalent of whatever the US trade show is or the China trade show. Look for that in Mexico and you will find it. And you can go to those trade show websites and you'll see like all these different exhibitors and stuff. When I was touring Sintermex to look at the facility where we're going to have our next Evo Latam, I ran into a plastics trade show there, and I was just like, it's huge, so awesome. And I make a plastic product. So of course I snuck in there and had to check it out. But I would encourage you guys, besides Evo Latam, of course, yes, I want you to come to my trade show because we have everything you need. That's the difference between our trade show and somebody else, is if you just go to like a wood products trade show, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get everything you need for e-commerce, which you need your logistics providers, you need your payment providers, you need all those things besides suppliers. So that's what you're going to find with us and with Evo Latam. But I would encourage you to start with the Mexico trip, start with Evo Latam, and then, come back and go to like a full-blown trade show just for that one product type. And you're going to have all the education you need, everything that you need to know how to source from Mexico. Then when you go back to another trade show or you go visit a factory, you're just going to be like ready to go, ready to smash it. All right. So why should you take the trip? Why should you consider coming on a sourcing trip with us crazy people, right? Well, first of all, the education. I talked about this before. When I started going to China, it just changed everything for me. When I knew how to walk through a factory, when I knew what happened in a factory, when I knew what 4 areas of the factory I should look at, when I knew all about how factories deal with quality control and, you know, the different things that, you know, how a logo gets stamped on a product, like all of that stuff. When I learned all of that, it just changed everything. So the education is the biggest reason. We not only have several days of conferences on everything from private label strategy all the way to sourcing to you know, everything you can imagine. We cover it in terms of, it's a very well-rounded education. So you learn like Mexico culture and business, you learn you know, we do factory tours together, all of that. So it's a really well-rounded education and you're really going to love it. We have everybody from brand new people who haven't even launched their first product yet. And of course, we had some of those on our last trip and they came out like ready to go because of that well-rounded education. And we also had people that had recently exited their brands and were coming for inspiration to start their next one. So there's a ton of different opportunities no matter where you're at in your business. The second thing is food, drinks, and networking. That, like, the whole trip is food, drinks, and networking. When you go to a foreign land with a bunch of other sellers and you're all in the same hotel and you eat your meals together every day, and then you go to conferences together and you do tourist activities together and you do dinners together, and then you go attend trade shows together and do factory tours together, you become a family. To this day, the group chat from our last trip is still going, like every day, like everybody's just, and it's not just talking about Mexico. Like they're like, hey, does anyone have a supplier for this? Or does anyone have a resource for this? Or does anybody know a good lawyer for this? And it's just so great to see them continuing, just taking care of each other. So that's just awesome. The networking is really great. And then, you know, of course, tourism. We do some really cool tourist things in Mexico City. We went to the top of the World Trade Center and they let us up on the roof and like we took all these awesome pictures together. And we also rented a double-decker tour bus. And it was a private bus just for us and we took it around and just had a lot of fun together. And then of course, we've got the 2-day trade show. So that's part of the Mexico trip. So when you come on the Mexico trip, you start with the conferences and then we do the factory tours and all the fun touristic stuff. And then the last 2 days of the trip, we go to the trade show together. And the first night of the trade show, we have the Ecom Connect networking party. And it is a blast. That's where you can meet other sellers who are there for the event and you can schmooze with exhibitors and service providers and all that kind of stuff. We just dance the night away and it's a great time. And then finally, it's all inclusive. So we want to make it easy for you. We don't want you to be stressed out, like coming to a foreign land and going, what do I do? Like, where do I stay? No, you come, you get yourself to the airport. We tell you, you know, how to get there and what to do, but you get yourself to the airport. We take care of everything else. There's somebody there, sign with your name on it. Like it is the VIP deal, right? We're taking care of you start to finish so that you don't have to think about anything. You just get to come and enjoy and meet other sellers and, you know, do all this fun stuff with us. So when is it? It is the 11th through the 17th of February. And then the expo itself is the last 2 days. So you arrive on the 11th and you depart on the 17th. And then we attend the expo together on the 15th and the 16th. And I'll show a quick video. our ceramics factory we went to on the last trip. So cool to see them hand painting all that stuff. And this is the trade show. This is our first one. That's the airport when you arrive. All right, so fun video. It makes me really nostalgic and excited to go to the next one. I'm ready to go again. All right, let me go to the next slide here. All right, guys, and why is there a distinct advantage? I really want you to develop relationships with your suppliers. I want you to learn how to do that. Sourcing in person is awesome. Secondly, I want you to be the first. Like, this is a new destination for sourcing. Nobody's doing it yet. So it is really exciting to be part of, you know, the first. That's why we want AMZ insiders to do it with us. We need Joey and Jamie to be there so they can be part of the first.
Right? Exactly. I put the discount code in the chat for everybody.
Yes. Yes, it is a very good discount too, guys. We're about to get to that. And then sourcing products your competitors can't easily find, and not to mention not necessarily competing, having your factories compete against you, right? So your competitors aren't necessarily going to be able to find your suppliers, right? If you're sourcing from Mexico, that's like not a thing right now, right? Yes, Sonia, definitely beads and jewelry. Yes, for sure. We had several jewelry people at our last expo. Saving time and money is really great. Our people from our last trip, they called this the money slide. We had Branded, they're an aggregator, and they acquired a brand that's actually established in Mexico. And they broke down the cost of a sports water bottle like this, moving it from China to Mexico. And actually, the cost to produce a unit in Mexico is more expensive. But by the time they added in the savings and no tariffs, shipping, thousands of dollars every shipment, right? And then the lead times so that they could order less every time, right? It was so nice. I was working with one of our sellers that went on the last trip. And she, she's getting ready to reorder. And I was just telling her, I was like, remember, you don't have to order a container load. You can order a little bit more often because you can get it to Amazon in 2 days. Talk about seed feeding to Amazon now with all the restock limits. Like, how great is that? You know? So anyway, moral of the story here, they moved this, a sports water bottle like this from China to Mexico, and it ended up saving them almost $2 a unit. When all was said and done, because of all of those savings. So even if your per unit cost is more expensive in Mexico, doesn't necessarily mean the whole thing will be more expensive. So changing your supply chain and your logistics is really, really awesome. And what's included, right? And what do we give you as part of this, right? You get your VIP airport pickup and all of our private local transportation. We take private buses everywhere, like everything's taken care of. You get 6 nights of premium hotel and accommodations, 7 days of premium private meals and beverages, like everything we do, everything private, everything's together. We go out to really fancy restaurants and rent out the whole thing. And so it's very exclusive. It's very cool, right? And then we also do 3 days of masterminds and training with experts, right? 2 private factory tours with experts and coaches. It's one thing going to a factory tour for the first time by yourself, but when you're going with experts, it's a totally different story. We do 2 VIP group networking excursions. It's a really cool experience. We rent out the whole place, and yeah, the place that we have for the networking party after the expo, the first day of the expo, is breathtaking. Like, it's the whole top of the Cintramex, and you can see the whole area of Monterey, the mountains, the sun, just beautiful. It is just awesome. And then we also have our, you get your VIP access to the trade show. So everyone else gets to go to the trade show and go talk to suppliers and stuff like that, walk the trade show floor, what you typically expect at a trade show. But people who come on the Mexico trip with us, we actually have a VIP area set aside for you with like a gorgeous buffet and like an area where you can just sit and like chill, and then you can go back out whenever you're ready. So we can't just spoil you the whole trip and then take you to the trade show and be like, okay, bye, so we definitely have to, it's our trade show, so we got to treat you guys good. And then of course, making that one contact that forever changes things for you, that could be a person on the trip, that could be a supplier, it's going to totally pay for your trip, and it always does, it never fails. So that's, a lot of value in the trip. And what is it going to cost you guys? I'll just pause that video, but it's going to cost you guys $39.97. I've taken $1,500 off your trip price, but these guys only have 10 coupon codes to claim. So make sure that if you are, considering this, and we only take a max, like I said, of 80 sellers on the trip, and it's a month out. So people are buying tickets right now like crazy because everybody's last minute around here in this e-commerce industry. So if you guys are interested in coming, you can always reach out to me. You can go to the mexicotrip.com/more-info. And you can fill out the form there, and we'll get on a call with you and answer your questions, whatever you have. But speaking of questions, let's open it up for questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, you can put them in the chat, and I'm going to check the other platforms.
Is there an itinerary? Yes, Lana, that's such a great question. I actually just posted about this the other day. So on the first day, when you arrive, the 11th, that's just a travel day. We do have a welcome reception that day. So you travel, we pick you up from the airport, people will be coming in all day, right? We do have a welcome reception, and you'll get to meet the other sellers that are there, and just kind of network and hang out. There'll be some light refreshments in there. But the first day, the 11th, is just like chill day. The second day, the 12th, is a conference day. So we do conference all day that day, learning and conference. So we had breakfast together in the morning, and then we do all day long conference. So we started off with like private label stuff, and we talk about just in general, just e-commerce knowledge. And then we get into culture and business in Mexico, that kind of stuff. And then that evening, we have a welcome dinner, a private welcome dinner at a really cool place in Monterrey. So we go to a really amazing little restaurant and area in Monterrey. And it's going to be magical. I just have to tell you guys, like, it is, it's really, there's going to be some entertainment there, your food, your drinks, everything's covered, but it is going to be magical. And then the next day, we do a half day of conferences. And that's where we really get into like sourcing. We'll talk about the factory tours, stuff like that. Like how do you prep for that? And then that afternoon, we do tourist activities together all afternoon. We have private, we're doing a boat ride. We're doing a private boat ride. And then we're also going to do another really fun thing that I don't want to tell you guys, but I promise it'll be really, really, really cool and really fun and unique, something you've never done before. Monterrey has a unique history of manufacturing, and they actually showcase that throughout their parks in the city, and it is so cool. So we're going to do something related to that. And then that night, of course, we have dinner together again, really, really fun. All of our dinners are really special. And then the next day, we do our factory tours. So we're going to go to 2 different factories. And the idea of a factory tour, I always get this question. The idea of a factory tour is that is not for you to source from that factory, right? That's not the idea. We're not taking 100 people to a factory for all of you to source from that one factory, right? Because people will be like, well, wait, I do jewelry and we're not visiting a jewelry factory, right? Or I do textiles and we're not visiting a textiles factory. And then they're just like bummed out or something, right? But they don't realize that it's not about the type of factory. It's about the education. Every factory has 4 areas you should be visiting and 4 things you should be paying attention to and questions you should be asking. and staff, like offices, things like that you should be looking at. It doesn't matter whether you're in China or Mexico or America. These are things that you as a sourcing pro should know. And that's why we take you. We take you for that education. And also then you get to meet these factory owners and ask your questions before you go to a trade show, right? You get to ask all these questions about like, how do you handle packaging and how you do this and how do you do this? And then when you go to the trade show the next day, you're just like, you're ready, you're just like, yes, I got this. I'm ready to go, right? So the next day is all about factory tours. And then the following 2 days, we attend Viva Latam Expo together. You get your VIP treatment there. We do the networking party the first night. I think Brandon Young's throwing a party the second night too. So, that's always fun. And then there's also at Viva Latam, there's 2 days of expo, but there's education on stage all day long. So we have speakers on stage all day long. So you also can catch a talk there. You can, see a supplier or service provider. You can get into Mercado Libre. Like we've got people there for that. Amazon's there, Alibaba's there. Like it's just so cool. So anyway, that's the next 2 days. And then that night we do like one kind of little farewell dinner at the hotel. And the next day you go home or wherever you want to go. I don't care where you go. It's the end of the trip. So we'll take you back to the airport for your departing flight and say goodbye, but it's not goodbye forever because we have our attendee group chat and stuff like that. So you'll have made friends and family, and it'll be really awesome.
Yeah, there's nothing like in-person experiences, and especially experiencing a trip like this. So this is incredible that you put this together. I want to say like big congratulations for doing this. It's incredible. There are some questions on the other platforms.
Yeah, go ahead.
2 questions. One of them, I think this was from earlier in your presentation. It was about quality control in Mexico. So tell us a little bit about the quality control.
Yeah, so I think that it's important to note that quality control varies by supplier, no matter where you are in the world, right? Quality control, when you learn to be a sourcing expert, which I want all of you to become, when you're paying attention to the right questions you need to ask. Remember, I was talking about like factory tours, right? One of the areas that you should be looking at in every factory you visit is actually their quality control. And so that's something to really think about. Every supplier you talk to, you should be talking about like, how do you handle quality control, right? There's questions you should ask suppliers. So of course we cover that in our education, and you're going to get that hands-on on the trip. But it doesn't matter whether you're sourcing from Mexico or China or Taiwan or India or wherever. Quality control will always be an issue if you don't pay attention to it and make sure that you're vetting your suppliers for it. So Mexico quality is really, really great. I mean, one of our sellers who went on our last trip, who's sourcing from there now, she showed me like she got her sample. They sent her like a 3D printout. She had her sample in 2 days in her hands. I was like, I am so jealous of you right now. Like, why am I not sourcing from Mexico yet? Like, I'm working on it, you guys. I got to move a tool, like an injection molding tool, all the way to Mexico. So, but I'm working on it. But, I was so jealous because I'm like, man, your supply chain is so short, like everything's good. But she still had to follow those processes, right? To vet the supplier and make sure, but her quality control is really, really good. She had one issue with a side piece of the product, and that we had to address, but you would have had that same issue had you sourced from anywhere else. So that's what's important to know. It's just like the MOQs question, right? Like people are always like, oh, MOQs are super high. Well, it really depends on their supplier and your relationship with them.
That's true. Yes. And I imagine going to these trade shows, you get really good relationships because it is face to face. Whereas with, I have a supplier in China and one in the Ukraine right now, and we'll occasionally do like a video call, but it is not the same. I'm like, it would be so nice if I could just get on a plane and go over there and have dinner with you.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I miss visiting my suppliers in China for sure, because it does take away from the relationship when you haven't seen them in years, and you're just kind of like having a WeChat every once in a while. So yeah, it is nice to be closer to them and to be able to develop those relationships. And in Latin America, relationships are very important. So it matters. You're not going to be able to just like, of course I encourage you guys, like I said, to look up trade shows and stuff and like look at the exhibitors and like maybe do some more research and stuff. But if you try to email them or whatever and try to source remotely, you're not going to have the same experience at all.
That's kind of this next question. Other question that we got, it was like, our trade shows really the only way to connect with them? If I can't go on the Mexico trip, like how else could I source from there?
It's very difficult. I told you the story about how I honestly thought that Mexico wasn't viable because I was trying before I, did the sourcing trip. I wanted to source from there. And I'm a sourcing expert, you guys. Like I've been to China like a million times and I help other sellers. I get on negotiation calls with people's factories in different countries. And, I'm an expert negotiator. Like I've saved people $90,000 on one order on one call, like I really know what I'm doing. And trust me, like it's going to be very hard. Like it's just something you just got to bite the bullet. You got to do it because it's going to change your business. If you think about it, that one contact in Mexico that you make, that you build that relationship with, that you can now source from, that already paid for your trip 10 times over again. Right? When I think about the people who came with me to China who learned how to negotiate, who learned how to walk through factories, who learned how to vet their suppliers and saved tens of thousands of dollars on one order, that one trip to China is now like, whatever, like that was the best experience of my life. And I totally paid for it. So that's how you have to think about it. You really need to take your business seriously. And it's not just me going, hey, I'm trying to sell you a sourcing trip, right? I'm only taking 100 people on this trip, you guys. Like this trip is expensive for me. It's not like I'm, becoming a gazillionaire off of this trip. Like this is an insane endeavor for me. So I'm doing this out of my passion for helping people learn how to source, and also for us wanting to get into Mexico. So yes, I would of course encourage you to discover Mexico, but if you're trying to do it remotely, you're just not going to have the luck.
This is just a question I have. What do you think about like the future? And I know it's not this year or next year, but for suppliers in Mexico getting on a website or even getting onto Alibaba or maybe starting their own website, or start a website for them.
Yeah, Alibaba has a ton of money set aside for Latin America, but they haven't been incredibly successful yet because they have not invested in the relationships. So that's the thing is, Alibaba, we've met with them, all of that, and that's the thing. That's what we also learned when we tried to do our first trade show there, and we were not getting responses from suppliers. Like we had like 20 suppliers signed up for our first show, and we were trying to have like over 100, and then when we actually showed up in Mexico, because they'd never heard of us before, so they were like not trusting us. Like, again, those personal relationships in Latin America are so important. And so then when we showed up in Mexico for the sourcing trip, we were like a week early, right? All of a sudden, like suppliers came out of the woodwork, and we were selling booths like up until the day of the trade show. And we ended up with over 150 suppliers. And it was just like, whoa, this escalated quickly, like it was very crazy. So it's just a different, it's a changing landscape. So do I think that in 5, probably more like 7 or 8 years before we get a significant web presence where we could actually do more remote sourcing? And also Mexico really isn't a contract manufacturing type of country. It's not where China is like, hey, can you make this for me? And it's like, it's just not, you do need to have those conversations, and you do need to know how your product is made, and you do need to like partner with your supplier and really, work together. And if you do that in any other country, you're going to have massively more success than you do trying to source remotely. Like even in China, like I said, I brought my products from 4x multipliers to 14x just by developing relationships.
That's impressive. I love it. Well, I love this mission that you're on, and I do believe that it is changing the sourcing landscape, which needs to happen. And it's awesome that it's, for Amazon and e-commerce sellers. So that's super cool. The trip is definitely amazing. Thank you for the generous discount for our community. We'll continue to share it out. Before we close, I do want to kind of touch on quickly just Amazing at Home and some of the stuff that you do. And I know there's still a few people online who have connected with you, and you've been able to help them with listings and beyond. So if you just want to give like a little bit about Amazing at Home.
Yeah, so I own a consulting and marketing firm called Amazing at Home, and you can visit us at amazingathome.com. And the easiest way to understand my nerd brain. So I left a job in cybersecurity to go e-commerce full time. And I started with wholesale, and I was writing my own listings, and I am good at hacking things. So I just reverse engineered Google's algorithm to figure out Amazon's. And I started testing it with all these different product listings, right? So to learn SEO, because if the customer can't find your listing, they can't buy from you. So, for me, listing optimization is one of the most important things you could do. And not just writing good copy, but actually taking the customer on a journey. So I've studied buyer psychology, and I know the 7 photos that convert in the exact order that you should put them in to get them to convert. So we do offer listing optimization, and it's the Amy way. So like all of my writers are trained the Amy way. Like I'm very picky about it. And, that I personally review every listing before it goes out. We deliver all of our listings with a video of what we did and why, so that you actually understand it. And we're sellers. So we actually, and consultants, we get to actually see the results of our work. Right. So, I love what I do with helping sellers just get their products seen and get their products sold, and would love to give you guys a free listing review. So if you just want me to take a look at your listing free of charge, and just want Amy to get nerdy about your listing, you can go to amazingathome.com/listing-review, or just go to amazingathome.com, and underneath the services menu, click free listing review. And no strings attached. I'll just go through your listing. I'll share my screen, and I'll be like, I think you can improve this. I think you can improve this, and just tell me what's going on. Like, hey, Amy, my PPC is not converting. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm not getting any sales. I got a bunch of sales, and then the sales stopped. Like, what do I do? Right. Happy to review your listing. No strings attached. I don't care if you buy a listing from me. You're actually teaching me by letting me review your listing, because I'm a nerd about that stuff. So happy to do that for you guys. And if you guys need listing optimization or photography or A+ content services, we're here for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I love how you guys send the personalized videos of why you did it. That's cool. I don't know anybody else in the industry who does that. So
it's nice. Not very scalable. That's probably why.
It's a lot of work,
but we love it. We were there to help you,
It is awesome. Well, we will have you back on another topic, but thank you for in-depth of sourcing of Mexico. It's a hot topic. Almost everybody who is watching tonight and in our training, we talk about other places to source that is not China. So it's super cool. Everybody wants to source from Mexico because it's so close to the United States. And I love that you have your hands on it. So thank you so much. We'd love to have you back, and enjoy your entire week at your conference. And I want to hear all about it.
For sure. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. And thanks everybody for engaging and asking all the questions, and hope to see you guys in Mexico.
Yeah. And thank you in the chat. Let Amy know if you have any final questions, and give her a big thank you, because I thought you rocked it, girl.
Thank you, darling. All right, everybody, have a great night. I'm going to go pack the rest of my bags before having to be at the airport by 4 a.m.
Oh, boy. All right, have a good trip. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.